So we're going to create some content now that'll be page specific, and we can put that in a separate column. And that way, if we wanted to clone the header and the footer to other pages in one operation, then we can sub out this page specific content and put in the content that we want. So we're going to create a column for this. And then in this column, we'll begin with the text, which overlays an image and then has the parallax effect. So for that, we're going to create a column. And we'll create these in the page-specific column. Okay, there's our two new columns. We're going to create a text post and an image post. Hit submit. There's our new posts. Trying to create post over image post and a parallax effect. So what we're going to do is use scaling EM units instead of percentages. And then we can slow the rate of scaling down so it doesn't scale proportionately. It ends up being a relatively larger at the smaller view screen sizes, which is often advantageous so that text becomes more easily viewable at the mobile widths and not too large at the desktop widths. We go back to the post we just created. We go to the text post. We're going to paste in our text. So here we'll look at styling a subset of our text using TinyMCE directly. So before we click into the text, we're going to hit this little Activate TinyMCE button. We're going to select that text. We'll choose the red-orange color. The special font family, we'll choose Paprika. So we want to magnify the font size, 1.75 EM. Now we also want to give it a text shadow. So we go up to Formats, we go to Text Shadow. For the light shadows at 80% opacity, we're going to choose the light small right shadow. And notice the shadows are in EMs. The shadow will scale with our font size. Now for the overall post styles, we'll give it a black background at 30% opacity. We can set the text align value to center. Font color, we'll make a white. We're going to make a border for this text post. We'll make it 1px, top, bottom, left, right, and white. And lastly, we went ahead and set a padding. Top, bottom, 2em, and a left, right, 3em. Go to the settings, and then the EM, REM, percent, max width, min width, and width choices. And under the width choice, put in a 58 EM width. We go to the positioning options, and then we set this post to absolute. And for the left and right position, we can choose the center horizontally. Now, we didn't want to use the center vertically because it does use a transform property for the vertical effect that we'll be using, which parallax also used, so we'll avoid. And we're going to give it a top 23%, which will center it within the parent column. Notice we're not using top position EM units. It's because at mobile viewport width, the text post would be closer to the bottom as it overlays the image post if we use EM units due to the relatively larger value of the top position. We'll submit these post changes. We're going to go back to the parent column. We set the text post to absolute. But we want it to be absolute relative to the parent column. So to do this, we go up to the parent column and we set it to relative. So now we need to set up the value of scaling EM units. As EM units are based on the font size of the element or the nearest parent elements, we'll set the value of the font size to 20px. To do this, we're going to set up the font units in the column. We're going to set them to scale between 2000 and 270 for the lower viewport width. And we're going to leave it set at linear, at least initially. So this sets the value of an EM unit at 20px on larger screens, and it'll scale down at lower viewport widths, which is the value that we wanted for the width and padding settings for the text post. But we also wanted the text post to have a font size of 1.5 EM for the text itself. But of course we don't do that because then all the values of the width and the padding units that we set up would be multiplied by 1.5. Due to the multiplicative effect of setting font size in EM units. But we can easily get around this, and we'll put a division wrapper around our text post, and then we'll just style that using a special class style. So let's take a look at that. We're going to use the JS Express Edit parse editor. The parse editor itself never modifies the post-level division styles or configurations, but it can manipulate, add, create, delete any of the content within the post itself. First, we activate TinyMCE. Then we activate the parse editor. We're going to be looking at how all this works in detail in the subsequent videos. So for this video, we're just using it to add a division wrapper around the entire text. We do that under the multi-editor. The very last option is for adding a division around the entire inner contents of the post. We hit that. Okay, there's our new division, and we add a class style to that new division wrapper that we just put in. We're going to put in post 1, and then we hit the Update Classes button. It didn't submit it yet. We just need to hit any submit button to do that. First, we're going to go to the Style Special Classes for text posts. Activate one class, because that's all we need for this text post. And that'll turn out to be post 1. We hit submit. Then we go and we set up a font size of 1.5 EM. Now we go and upload the image that we want in the image post. So now we go back to the web page and we take a look at that. As we scale through the viewport widths, we see that the Welcome to the Tide text post is scaling proportionately with the overall width. We go back to the parent column, we go to the font sizes. Down below the viewport choices, we go to the option where we can modify the linear scaling. We're going to slow it down to 92%. We'll submit that, refresh the page, and OK. And there we see at the lower viewport size, it is larger. Whereas as we move up towards the larger viewport size, we see that it maintains the original smaller size, and we can modify that scale however we want. And we also see that the text overlaying the image is more or less vertically centered. We're going to activate JS for our parallax effect. We go to the settings, to the parallax effect choice, and then activate it. We have a choice for element and background image. We want element. We're going to choose a scroll ratio of 1.35. Now, any ratio over 1 is going to scroll faster than the native scroll speed. And for ratios under 1, it'll scroll slower. This choice here is for the offset distance. We're going to leave that for now set at 0 and take a look at what we have so far. And then we'll look at any at media width tweaks that we need to make. We hit submit. Now, what we see now is that by initiating the stellar parallax, the post itself is now lower than it was relative to the image. And as we lower the viewport width, we see that that offset actually increases, and we'd rather have it stay centered prior to scrolling. So we'll try 80px for the larger viewport widths, and then we'll increase it for smaller viewport widths. We go to the initial settings for parallax that we just set up. And we're going to add a min width of 840px for the larger view screen sizes. And then we're going to go up and we're going to put in an offset of 80px. And that'll bring the parallax element higher up before we start to scroll. And then we click the additional at media control. We're going to turn it on, use element mode. We'll keep the same speed ratio, put in an offset of 120px. And this time we'll set a at media max width 840 for that. Now let's say we want to limit scroll events, or we want to turn off the effect on small view screen sizes. We can choose another additional at media controlled parallax effect. And then we'll choose to force off parallax at a particular media width. And then we'll go down and we'll choose a max width of 500px. We're going to submit that, and then we'll take a look at what we got. Force off option means is that even if parallax is turned on at a larger view screen size, and then the view screen is sized to under 500px, it will still shut parallax off. And it's reversible if we go back up above 500px. So what we just saw is that the text post is centered over the image post at the various view screen sizes, which is what we wanted before we start scrolling. To be able to scroll with this, we need to put in more post types. We're going to go ahead and do that in the next video.